So we were discussing the sutra where we discussed about the concept of faith. The sutra which was sutra number 20, Shraddha Virya Smriti Samadhi Prajna Purvaka Itaresham. That is the concentration of the true spiritual aspirant or the person who is aspirant who is practicing yoga can be attained through faith. That is the first condition. He should have faith, not only faith in the method of his yoga or the guru, but also the faith in the eternal reality, the Purusha or the Paramatma or Brahman. If we don't consider that there is an eternal reality in the background of all our seen world, then there is absolutely no meaning in our spiritual practices. Our spiritual practices or yoga, Raj Yoga means it means that we have faith in the eternal, and though we are living, we are not able to realize or experience the eternal, and we are living in the non-eternal, the temporary, the transient. Still, we have faith, that Shraddha, that the eternal is always there. And if we somehow, through yoga or through any other means, connect ourselves to that eternal, then we are safe, secure, and protected, and also will be full of joy and full of pure consciousness, Chit, Chaitanya, knowledge, consciousness, or Sat, which is eternal existence. So we will never, there will never be a moment where we will feel that we do not exist. In fact, that idea that I exist, it persists. Even in deep sleep, we know that we are existing. We existed even though the world was not there for us in our deep sleep. So also the world did not exist in the dream. The new world, a new kind of world existed. We saw different things, different scenario before us. Only when we wake up, we saw the world as we see it now. So in all the three states, whatever be the reality, the things kept on changing, but the feeling that I exist, the Sat aspect of our personality was always there. It was there in a mild form, but it was still there. So what happens when through yoga you have Shraddha in this Sat Chit Ananda, the Ishta or the Brahman or Purusha in this case. In Patanjali's yoga, he talks about the Purusha, the eternal unchanging Purusha. So if you have faith in that, then the concentration which he is aspiring for to attain to Samadhi, Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, these five things are necessary, Samadhi, Prajna. So Sadhya, Virya is energy, Samadhi is Smriti, that is recollectedness, constant memory of that faith, the thing in which you have faith. So that is why we ask the sadhaka or aspirant to repeat the name. We keep on emphasizing, no, that is the eternal, that Ishta is eternal. Ishta is our eternal reality. So as we go on again and again, repeating or recollecting what we repeatedly repeated in our life, that becomes firm, that Shraddha becomes firm. So, and along with that, Virya also comes. Virya means energy, tremendous energy to hold on to our belief. Recollectedness, absorption. Absorption means Samadhi, here it means absorption. And Prajna Purvakam, that is uh, illumination. Prajna means total knowledge. We get a clear picture of what is eternal, what is not eternal. So the non-eternal does not engage our attention anymore. So that kind of illumination is known as prajna. So prajna is actually pure awareness. So I mentioned this in the previous class that in Ayurveda there is a idea known as prajna aparadha. Prajna aparadha. Aparadha means some kind of fault or some kind of sin. So when we sin against our own prajna, when we lose our awareness, that's why one has to be alert all the time. So losing alertness, losing consciousness, even for a fraction of a second, falling into the unconscious is not a desirable state. But we do fall into the unconscious throughout the day. Many of the things we do mechanically, we are not consciously aware of the things that we do in life. We do many things as if we are some kind of robots. We have been trained to say in certain skills, and those skills do not require an awareness. So the same thing which we can do with full of attention and prajna, we do without prajna, and that is why it is not yoga. So yoga needs faith, yoga needs full of energy, virya. Without that, it is not possible. Then it requires some smruti, that is recollectedness, constantly trying to assert that awareness or that chit or consciousness. And we take the help of the Ishta. He is the doorway to the infinite consciousness. So we consider our Ishta or the God whom we worship, the personal God, as Chit Ghanakai in Sri Ramakrishna's beautiful hymn. Sri Ramakrishna is described by Swami Vivekananda as Chit Ghanakai, means a body which is not of flesh and blood. Our body is made of flesh and blood. We are gross. That is why we lapse into unconsciousness. We do prajna aparada. Prajna is not there. But in Sri Ramakrishna's case, he was ever alert. He never could make a false step, take a false step. So that prajna is known as awareness, and that prajna is pure consciousness. So when you are one with the consciousness, you make very few mistakes. That's why Thakur used to say, an expert dancer will never take a false step. So if we have this Shraddha, if we have Virya, recollected strength, Smriti, constant remembrance of God, then we have Samadhi, that is total absorption in the idea. If we have these things, and you will find that they are helpful for a recollectedness, absorption, and finally illumination, that is prajna, then the true concentration or the true goal of life is attained. So as we discussed this word Shraddha, we discussed a lot. What results in Shraddha, what faith is and what faith is not. It is not a belief. Surely it is not a belief based on hearsay. Somebody says something and we believe. No, we have to develop a conviction. Conviction in the eternal verities of life, eternal realities of life. That God exists and God is true. As much as God was true to Jesus or to any other prophet, he should be as true for us, not just verbally, but we should have that conviction, that Shraddha. That is how Shraddha, what Shraddha means in this context. It's a phase which may start with some kind of belief, but that it should not end with belief. It should grow into a stronger and stronger conviction. So you know the eternal reality is something that does not change, that something which does not ever make us without prajna. So prajna is also necessary, that consciousness, that intense alertness or awareness of everything that we do, everything that we think. So that is also in some of the traditions, it is known as vipassana, trying to see it clearly. What do you mean by seeing clearly? We do certain things, but let us not do like machines. Let us do it with full consciousness. Whatever we want to do, whatever we want to say, let us not just say and talk in very loose terms. We have to be very careful in what we say, why we say it. So like they say, when you walk, you have to tiptoe, we have to go slowly, uh, taking care of every step. Then you don't fall or stumble. But if you hurry up, you will stumble. So prajna is also like that. Prajna aparada means allowing the mind to fall into this unconscious state or semi-conscious state now and then. We become dreamy. We are supposed to live in the present, but suddenly the past drags us. The smriti of the past drags us. Here the smriti which is mentioned is different kind of smriti. The smriti of the past, the smriti of the future, our anxieties, our worries, our regrets of the past, things which have already happened. These are the two things which do not allow us to remain in the present. And that is when prajna purvaka means we have to be living in the present most of the time and see that the past does not drag us away, does not drag away our attention, nor does unnecessary imaginations of the future, they do not distract us. So to avoid that distraction, one has to be alert, and that is prajna. So one is faith, second is virya, that is strength, and then finally uh, uh, without energy, I mean, why we need energy? Energy is necessary because day after day we have to hold on to this smriti, recollectedness. Buddha pointed out in very clear terms that the main problem in our sadhana is laziness. What kind of laziness? It is not a physical laziness that you like to sit quietly. That is not laziness. A person may be sitting quietly in a place, doesn't mean that he is lazy, as long as his prajna is active. So Buddha used to say that if there is any sin, it is laziness. So you have to be up and doing. And tamas, it should not, mind should not revert to tamas. It should be intensely active, but it has to be steady. So sattva and tamas look similar. A highly intensely active or man with full of energy, virya, at the same time he is full of prajna, always alert. He may appear to be steady and calm and doing nothing. We normally associate virya or activity with a person who is rajasic, who's doing all the things, running around all the time. But tamas and sattva look similar. Tamasic person doesn't have the capacity to think. So he just whiles away his time doing nothing. And the sattvic person also does nothing, but his mind is intensely active. So he is full of prajna. So that is the difference. To have that kind of energy, to follow the instructions of the guru, and to really recollect the name or the sadhana which you have been given by your instructor or by your guru, you have to perform japa with full attention and full memory recollectedness. That is how, and without any laziness, that is with full of energy. So we need three things. We need energy to practice the recollectedness or the smriti. So virya and smriti go together. If we have virya, then we have smriti. And that first it begins with shraddha, because without shraddha, you will not feel like exerting yourself. If you have shraddha in the Guru's words, if you have shraddha in the faith, in the power of the mantra or the sadhana or the spiritual discipline which has been given to you, then there is no reason why you should not have energy for that. One will somehow gather enough energy to practice it again and again. And that recollectedness is nothing but repeated sadhana, the repeated mantra which we do, the repeated prayers that we do. So Buddha says tamas is the lowest condition. When we go to rajas, we create that virya, and when we are in sattva, then we are said to be established. That is when prajna comes. So prajna comes, the maximum prajna is shown when a person is sattvic, when his buddhi is active. So it is the buddhi, when it in the mind, there is a low reactive mind, which can be tamasic, or even if it doesn't react, then it is tamasic. If it reacts, then it is rajasic. Reacts very much, is a volatile mind, always getting upset over small things. So that is the rajasic mind. And sattva is again quiet mind like tamas, but quiet because of prajna, because of buddhi. So when the mind goes to the level of buddhi, more light is reflected in it, light of the Atman, light of the pure consciousness is reflected. And that is known as prajna. So we have to have a faith, shraddha in the truth of the scriptures and in the word of the teacher or the guru. Then we have to have energy, raise our mind from tamas to sattva, to rajas, and then finally to sattva. But one good thing about this energy is that energy is like a muscle. When we exercise our muscles, the more we exercise, we are not expending that energy. The muscle grows stronger and stronger. That is the principle. Otherwise, a person who goes to a gym, he should be weaker. He becomes stronger because of use. So this energy, the spiritual energy, is also like that. The more we exert ourselves, the more stronger we become, the more our capacity increases. So that is why virya is necessary. Uh, that it is very easy sometimes in the guise of sattva to just keep quiet. So everybody knows that if we want to play an instrument, a sitar for example, how much one has to practice, how much one has to exert, how much of virya or effort is necessary. Then you get some melodious music. But in the beginning, it is all, when we play the notes, it is so disturbing to the ears. But after so many efforts and trials, then how somehow you get used to those, uh, the playing of the instrument. So one has to force oneself, and after years and hours and hours and years of practice, one becomes sattvic. So also in spiritual life, in the beginning, it one has a tendency to go towards tamas. We feel lack of inspiration, we feel lack of, I mean, some kind of stupidity or dullness comes. Then one has to force oneself to do, whether he gets peace or not, he has to force constantly. That's why Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna used to say, do the japa at least 15,000-20,000 times. Force yourself to do. And then tell me if it doesn't yield results. Then you will get peace, calmness, and all the qualities that you wish for. You can't imagine that you will get these qualities after repeating the name a few times. One has to have this constant effort. And for that constant recollectedness, you need virya. So from virya comes smriti. So just as you go to the gym, the a few days you don't go, the muscles become relaxed and then they become weak. So one has to keep fit. So physically we exert so much. There are people who train for hours and hours every day just to keep themselves fit. If that is the condition with the gross body, then what about the mind? The mind also has to be exercised and practice recollectedness by full of energy. These things have to be done, and only when these things are done in a very energetic way, then we get the benefit of that. So faith increases through this recollectedness as also energy. Uh, that is the idea behind all these things, because faith is something which has to be increased. The faith doesn't remain steady, nor does the energy. There are ups and downs in our energy levels. So faith complements the energy that we have, and it's the recollectedness which we do, the constant practice of our sadhana or spirituality, that increases the energy. It's just like a gymnast. He goes to the gym and his muscles get stronger and stronger as he practices. So he should not give up that. And that strength gives him more faith. Oh, that I can do this. I can lift. The weightlifter first lifts, say, 100 kg. Then he finds that if I practice a lot, I can lift 150 kgs. So also, the mind also gets a strange kind of confidence because of recollectedness. So virya, smriti, and shraddha, they are all connected. The more shraddha increases, the more energy you put. The more energy you put, the more you recollect. And the more recollectedness is there, the energy again goes, and then each one compounds or complements the other. So through practice, as faith increases, through our personal energy and experience, and it grows through practice, constant recollectedness. And then you see the mind acquires a concentration or a unique direction. What is concentration? It is trying to focus the mind in a particular direction. So it becomes recollected in the basic meaning of the word. Whether you chant Om or a mantra followed by Om, we focus our mind. The recollectedness is about the meaning of the mantra. It's not just the mechanical repetition of the mantra. That will be unconscious repetition. When we are consciously repeating the mantra, our thoughts which have been scattered are gathered. That is the first thing that happens. And our mental field is reduced to few thoughts. Then it becomes easy to focus it on the recollectedness of the japa or whatever sadhana you are doing, the prayer which you are doing, the scriptures that you are reading. You do it in a conscious way. So we begin to collect them again and again and then direct it towards the Ishta or the knowledge of the Atman. If it is knowledge of Purusha in Patanjali, in Bhakti Yoga, in Tantras, it is the knowledge of the Satchidananda Brahman. We use the Shakti, the Virya, the Shakti of Prakriti to focus our attention and attain to that concentration and focus the mind, the scattered mind, and focus it on one particular eternal reality, that is the knowledge of Atman, the knowledge of our Ishta. Who is the Ishta? What is his role? What will he help? By connecting to him, what do we gain in life? As we do this constantly, Shraddha, Virya, Smriti. Shraddha, faith, we develop more strength, and more recollectedness. That results in more strength, more Virya, then more Shraddha. Faith increases. So it is a vicious, where it's a nice cycle. Each one strengthens the other, and then we finally reach the goal. I mean, the goal of Atman is attained, the knowledge of Atman. The goal, that is the knowledge of Atman, or the knowledge of our innermost reality, which we begin our journey thinking that our Ishta, or meditating on the Ishta, who represents or the God or the Ishta Devata, or the personal God whom we worship. That is what meditating on whom we get the knowledge of Atman. As we do this, we feel that we are increasingly getting absorbed. That is why the word samadhi is given after smriti and smriti, that constant recollectedness, repetition will induce the mind to go in a particular absorbed state. We get absorbed. It's like a painter continuously painting with all the different strokes, and then you get so absorbed in the painting. So that kind of absorption, when you have in your spiritual practice, then it becomes samadhi, and then comes prajna. Then when that absorption is there, we are absorbed in the idea that we are seeking. We do not know, first we do not have an experience of our ishta, the real nature of our ishta. But first, as we get absorbed, as we get concentrated, you will find that that absorption, that samadhi, helps you to get the knowledge of that Atman, that consciousness or that awareness of what it really is, the supreme consciousness. Absorption then merges into spiritual illumination. And then the knowledge is ours. Once we get that knowledge, that we come to the end of after samadhi, the knowledge dawns, and then we never make the mistake. It is like uh, trying to enter a door, repeating by faith. We have faith that once we get inside, we will be safe, trying to knock on the door through recollectedness. But once suddenly the door opens, when we get absorbed, when we are focused, when we are determined that we will enter this whole world, a new world of consciousness. And then suddenly the knowledge does not come in bits and pieces like we acquire worldly knowledge. In worldly knowledge, we acquire knowledges in bits and pieces. We know a little of chemistry, we know a little of physics, a little of mathematics. But this knowledge is not that kind of secular knowledge. It is a spiritual prajna, or knowledge, or wisdom, or illumination. That is a better word. We cannot use knowledge in the limited sense. This knowledge is knowledge with a capital K. So that means illumination. So that knowledge is known as prajna. So that prajna comes. So the moment this prajna slackens, we just fall down into some unconscious state or dreamy state. That is when we become more and more gross, and we are actually we lose sense of our direction. Then again we have to pull ourselves up with shraddha, with virya, with recollectedness, with samadhi, with absorption. When we do all these four steps, then the knowledge again comes. So the knowledge comes in flashes. It may come, it may vanish, then it may again come back. So all these things happen to a yogi. But in 21 verse, the next verse, this absorption can be permanent, or absorption can be more longer lasting, or the illumination can be longer lasting if Tivra Samveganam Asanna. Asanna means it is easy. Tivra means success in yoga. Asanna, success in yoga, comes quickly. Samveganam, who are intensely energetic. Tivra Samvega. If one has intense aspiration, intense desire, or intense energetic, that is a better word. Tivra Samvega means it's a combination of Shraddha, faith, and intense energy. So a person may do constant recollectedness, Smruti may be there, but if he doesn't have the Shraddha and faith and energy, Virya, Shraddha and Virya are are also important. It's not enough if you have concentration, if you have Smriti, if you do the japa or the recollectedness. Smriti is important, but Smriti is supported by Tivra Samvega, that is intense desire or intensely energetic person. So in spiritual matters, intensely energetic doesn't mean one has to run around and doing this, doing that. That's not the idea. Here, the idea of energy is putting all our energy in the chosen path. If you are doing some spiritual practice, focus on it, do it constantly till it yields results. So, success in yoga, if you do yoga, take it seriously. I mean, the higher yoga. So, Tivra Samveganam, to those people who are intensely energetic, success comes. Asana, it becomes easy. Asana means it can be easily attained. So success comes very easily to such people. If one has lukewarm devotion, Sri Ramakrishna used to give an example. He says, when you go to the market to buy a bull, the farmers normally they test the bull, how useful this, they weigh the cost. I mean, the cost of the bull is determined by a simple test the farmers do. What the farmers do is just press a little on the tail of the bull. If the bull is very energetic, the moment you press, it will simply get up. So Sri Ramakrishna observed all these things. How people select the good bullocks. They want energetic bullock who will work hard in the farm. So there are many bullocks lying down. So how do they decide? They just go and press with the leg or with the hand the tail. So when it pains, if the bull doesn't get up, that means it is a lazy bull. It is not energetic. So if it is intensely energetic, the bull just jumps up. So Thakur used to say that is what in spirituality also, Thakur used to test how these people react. I mean, how intense they are, how Tivra Samvega or the intensely energetic people are oriented towards, those who are oriented intensely with intense energy towards spirituality are the ones who will get realization much easier. Success will come to them in yoga, will come to them earlier. So that is what verse number 21 says. 22 says verse number. What about the others? Suppose some people say that I don't have that kind of intense energy, but I have a medium interest in spirituality. I do my best, and then most of the other time I do other things, but that spiritual pursuit is not so intense. Then he says, Mrudu madhyadhimatra tvat tatopi vishesha. So that means Mrudu means mild, medium, madhyama, and intense. Intense. So three types of aspirants, spiritual aspirants, people who practice yoga are there. So Patanjali says the effort may be mild. Mrudu means mild efforts. There are people who do mild efforts. Then there are some others who do medium efforts, madhyama. So madhyadi matratvat. Mane madhya adi. Adi means others. Others are intense. So depending on mild, medium or intense, the results accrue or you get the corresponding results. The yogi get those results. So the success that you as yogi desires. Theoretically, if you see, Sri Ramakrishna says, Swami Vivekananda said, what thousands of sadhakas did in several lives, in several centuries, Sri Ramakrishna did in one life. He practiced all the sadhanas of all the paths and attained success in a few days in each of these sadhanas. All the 64 tantras he practiced Vaishnava sadhana, he practiced Nirakar sadhana, he practiced Christianity, practiced all the sadhanas. And the reason why he could get success so fast is because of this particular sutra, that if the effort is intense, if you are intensely energetic and intensely your yearning is so much that the success can come, there is no limit. You can get it instantly depending on how intense you are. So we can reach the state of perfect yoga even within a space of a few seconds. That is what Sri Ramakrishna says, because he says when you go to a dark room, he used to give some wonderful parables, examples. He says when you go to a room, dark room, which has been dark for centuries. Now, when you take a matchstick and burn it, it will suddenly illuminate. The whole room will be illuminated. It's not that it will illuminate one corner and then go and then illuminate slowly. So the prajna or the illumination comes in a split second. It can come in a split second depending on how intense your yearning is. So since the Atman is eternally, that source of light, that source of intense Sat Chit Ananda is already there. It has been covered. The moment you remove the cover, as the moment you open the door and strike a match, then suddenly the light comes and all the darkness of thousands of years, maybe that room was not opened at all, it was dark throughout. That doesn't mean that it will take so much time to enlighten, to lighten up. So the Atman is eternally within us and our ignorance can be dispelled in 1 second or in many seconds, depending on our efforts. So the Stotra says, Mrudu Madhyama. If you are Mrudu, it will take a lot of time because there is so much darkness that we don't have that kind of light or prajna or illumination. So to a mild person, the illumination will come, but it will come slowly after a lot of effort. If it is medium, it may come a little faster within a few years. But if it is intense, as in the case of Sri Ramakrishna, who just had to uncover all the layers of darkness, and it happened almost instantly. It can be instantaneously, the darkness can be dispelled. That is what Sri Ramakrishna says. Practically, however, theoretically it is possible if we are in the same state as Sri Ramakrishna, but otherwise our progress is retarded by our past karmas, our samskaras. No matter how much intense we try to be, we are very intense on a particular day. After a few days, we find we slack. Then suddenly somebody reminds us, no, no, you have to be sincere. Then again we try to start our sadhana from step one. So our relative strength, our fears, our desires, our distractions, our past karmas decide all these things. You can't blame a person. The past karma will make you slack, will divert you from the goal, or make you spend your energy in useless pursuits. So no one can generalize or say for certain that this yoga will give you result within a week. As many people claim, there are many uh, courses which say that you will get samadhi in a week or a month. No, nobody can predict the time limit because it all depends on the sadhaka, the intensity which he has. Second, it also depends on the karma, our present fears, our desires, our obstructions, which are so many, and the relative strength of our energy. Everybody has a different energy level. Some people can work hard, some will be, some people, so you cannot generalize. Some people may get liberation very quickly. It sometimes can be a few months, it can be many years, or it can be lifetimes. Several lifetimes may be required to even get a glimpse of that. All we can say with this verse number 22, as it says, that no effort, whatever you do, this effort is not wasted. As Bhagavad Gita says, Nahi kalyanakrit kaschit durgatim tata gachati. So whoever has done some spiritual practice, none of it is wasted. It's not like money. You hoard some money and some robber comes and robs everything. That is possible in the gross level. But in the subtle level, all efforts that we do are simply accumulated as our good karma, as our good samskaras. And sooner or later, the harder we try, one day we will succeed. That is the idea. Now, is yoga, can we get the help of somebody in yoga? That is the question anticipated, and Patanjali answers. Concentration can be, as we saw in verse number 20, 21, and 22, it says you have to be intense, you have to have faith first, Shraddha, Virya, we have to have energy, then we have to have recollectedness, then we have to have absorption, and finally knowledge. But is there any other way? Patanjali says there is one more way. Ishvara pranidhanad va. Va means or. Concentration can also be attained, or also. It means also. Va means also. Ishvara pranidhanat. Pranidhanat means by devotion to Ishvara. So we all know the concept of Ishvara. It is the cosmic mind or the cosmic creator who, though his Prakriti is one with the Purusha. And that Ishvara can help us, can give us Shraddha, can give us Virya, can give us all the 5 steps are not necessary if one has devotion to this Ishvara. That makes the task easier. That's why some people, though they say that Patanjali does not believe in a personal God, but he believes in Ishvara. So Ishvara Pranidhana, here the Ishvara has been interpreted like that. Devotion to Ishvara in whatever form you accept him. You accept him as an incarnation, as a prophet, or as somebody who is one with the universal mind. That Ishvara can help you to attain to the same concentration which you would have done through Shraddha, Virya, and all those 5 steps may not be necessary. If you have devotion to Ishvara, suddenly he will give you prajna. That is also possible. So Patanjali is not discounting the fact that you can get the same benefit which you do through yoga, through concentration or devotion. For the first time, the idea of bhakti yoga comes here. Ishvara pranidhanat va, or you can do by simple devotion to the Ishvara. Then Ishvara will do everything for you. So who is this Ishvara? Now he is trying to give another definition, because we all know that he doesn't believe in a personal God. So he says, now what is this concept of Ishvara according to Patanjali? He says by worshipping Ishvara you can get it. But who is that Ishvara? The Ishvara whom we worship as an incarnation or as a prophet or anybody on whom we have tremendous faith. Who is that Ishvara? What is his nature? This is very important. Otherwise, all our sadhana does not fructify. We have to understand what this concept of Ishvara is. So 24th verse is a beautiful discussion or explanation of what Ishvara really means. So the Ishvara pranidhanatva means concentration, the same concentration which we did through 5 methods of Shraddha, Virya, um, Samadhi, Prajna, and all those 5 methods, 5 steps were told, Smriti. That can be done by devotion to Ishvara. Now, who is this Ishvara towards whom we should have devotion? Klesha karma vipakashaya paramrushta purusha vishesha Ishvara. So he has many qualities. Ishvara is just defined by Patanjali as Ishvara is a special kind of being. Klesha karma vipaka. Now what is that? We'll try to understand. Karma vipaka means results of action. Klesha means samskaras. Karmas. Now, these are different things. Here, for the first time, Patanjali introduces the idea of an Ishvara or God. According to Vedanta philosophy, Ishvara is the supreme ruler of this universe. He is Srishtikarta, Sthitikarta, and Pralaykarta. Srishti, Sthiti, Pralay. Destruction. He creates, he sustains for some time, and Prakriti destroys. This Prakriti, according to Ishvara, is the one, the ruler of the universe. That is how most of the religions, even the Semitic religions, believe in a creator, Srishta. They don't perhaps give so much importance to the destroyer, but we have all. We have the creator Brahma, we have the sustainer Vishnu, the concept of Vishnu as Ishvara, the concept of Brahma as Ishvara is the creator Ishvara. But all these three aspects are combined. So Vedanta, Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh all come together. The creator, sustainer, and the dissolver, or you may say, not destroyer exactly, it goes back into the primal state. So you can say dissolver, pralaya. So from pralaya, from the dissolved state, it comes out as creation, remains for some time, and then goes back into that seed form. So from seed, the tree comes, it stays as a tree for some time, and then it goes back, and then again another tree is born. So Brahman, the ultimate reality, cannot be said. If it is pure reality, Purusha does not create, Brahman does not create. Since by definition he is without attributes, the creation is seen only in Prakriti. So whatever we see in Prakriti is what we mean by Ishvara. Ishvara and Prakriti are closely connected. So the Father in heaven, or the God, or the Father in heaven, which Christian scriptures speak, is this something like this Ishvara? He is Brahman seen within Prakriti. The reflection of Brahman, who is pure consciousness, reflected in Prakriti, is Ishvara. So what is important is your devotion. It's not what Brahman is, what Ishvara is. Even if you consider Ishvara as the manifested form of Brahman, you can reach Brahman. But Advaitins and Buddhists and all, they said we don't need the concept of Ishvara. We can struggle with intense yearning. Even Patanjali accepts in verse number 20, 21, 22. He says, by continuous effort, by Shraddha, by Virya, by Smriti, by Samadhi, and by Prajna, you will get that illumination. But if you are weak, or if you want an easier method, there is another alternative method. It's not easy, but he says it is an alternative. Ishvara pranidhanatva. So liberation or moksha, becoming one with the Purusha or Brahman, it can be attained through devotion. That is the unique contribution of Patanjali. He says it can be reached with through devotion, pranidhana, Ishvara pranidhana. Pranidhana means devotion. So by worshipping that Ishvara, you get the same result as you could get through the other methods. But according to Patanjali, however, though Sri Ramakrishna says bhakti is a very easy method, there's no chance of, but he says, he gives a warning. It is a subtle and a slightly dangerous path. Why? Because there are pitfalls. You may get caught in Prakriti. You may have ambition, you may have pride. So when you consider Ishvara to be a powerful person, a powerful creator, you may also like to take a share of that power. And then you may be discouraged, or not discouraged, but you may there may be a pitfall, and that ambition and pride may come. Because through the grace of Ishvara, you may get strength, and that strength can make you vain. So Patanjali warns, devotion to a personal ideal of God, it has to begin with humility and service. So that is why in Bhakti Shastra, the first thing they emphasize is not just worshipping God. Then if you worship God and then get power, you can't digest that power, and that arrogance and that pride will destroy you. So that is what we see in many of the mythological characters. Ravana was a great devotee of Shiva. And so also there were other demons who, or Rakshasas, so-called Rakshasas. They were human beings, but they were great sadhakas in their own right. But they developed this demon of pride and ambition, because they got as they went on worshipping Ishvara, they got some of the powers of Ishvara and then they misused it. So that is why in Bhakti Shastra they say start your bhakti with humility and service. The more humble you are, the more you want to be humble and say that. That is why Namo Namaha, when you say Namaha, Shivaya Namaha means not me. I worship him. I worship him. He is the main person. I am nothing. I am zero. So the ego simultaneously, the idea of humility in service is introduced first. And then they say you can practice devotion. So you begin, first start with seva, start with service, and do it with vinaya or humility. It sweetens the dryness of intellectual discrimination. Intellectual discrimination sometimes make you full of pride that I know everything. Oh, this is what Brahman, it's very easy. All I need to do is practice. So that humility goes away when you follow the path of jnana. So the dryness of intellectual discrimination, it enkindles in a person the highest kind of love which man is capable, because man basically is an emotional being. So that emotion, if it is refined, uh, so we cannot even imagine that Brahman can be attained so easily with the kind of pride and arrogance in our sadhana. If you think I will do it, of course energy is required, but that doesn't mean that you have to be arrogant. So humility and service are as important. That is why Ishvara Pranidhanatma, by loving devotion to that Ishvara. So it does two things. It gives you the strength of Ishvara, but at the same time, it helps you to digest the strength which you get through this devotion. It makes you more and more humble, more and more service with a service attitude. And you think that whatever you do in this world is a service to that Almighty Lord whose grace I am seeking. So man is capable of this intense love, and for that love of God, he can do anything. He can go to any extent to serve that Lord in whichever way he can. That is how in the monasteries, first the Guru would ask the disciple to cut wood, and he might think, oh, what is all this? Why there is so much of seva to be done in the beginning? Why so much of service? That is, and the Guru also sometimes may scold the disciple. So humility and service, these are the two things which Patanjali says is encouraged by this verse, Ishvara Pranidhanatva. So we can all imagine Ishvara, who is a protector, who is a creator. We can see him, we can perceive him. That is why it is easier to worship a personal God and expect that he will do everything for us and also give us liberation. And that is exactly what happens. So the more intense we are in our devotion, the more intense we are in our humility and service to this personal God, not to any other human, but to this personal God or Ishvara. That is why even when you have a guru, you have to not consider the human aspect of that guru. You have to consider him as part and parcel of that Ishvara, one who opens the door to meet the Ishvara. So the Ishvara becomes, or the personal God becomes the prime mover that motivates you to do sadhana. So Ishvara has all the attributes which our minds can recognize. The grace, the affection, love, and so many human qualities are magnified in Ishvara. So if you want to increase your emotion or refine your emotion, then we direct it to Ishvara. Whatever we direct gets magnified. So whatever good qualities we have, if we want to increase, we just worship Ishvara with those qualities, with humility and with the spirit of service. And then the attributeless Brahman is attained by us by worshipping the attributes of Ishvara. That is a strange theory, or that is a strange way how this sadhana works. So if we set ourselves to serve this Ishvara, our personal God, if we dedicate all our actions, surrender our wills to him, then you will find that you get all the necessary qualities to make your sadhana successful. That is what he says. We shall find that he draws himself to us. This is the grace. This is known as the grace of God. Grace does not come. One has to worship with humility and service. Sri Ramakrishna compares it so beautifully with a ever blowing breeze. That breeze is always flowing. Your boat is there. But what about your sail? The effort which you do is just to raise the sail. You don't have to push the boat in water. The boat is there. It is not moving now because you have not raised the sail. The wind of grace is always blowing. Such a beautiful example Sri Ramakrishna is giving to make us understand the role of Ishvara in our spiritual life. So this Ishvara, this personal God, whose grace is always blowing, like the wind is blowing, and all you need to do is to strive hard to raise the sail. And when you raise the sail, you will find that the grace of God will push it forward. You'll get all the energy, all the strength to do your sadhana. So, in the Gita also there is a verse which says, whatever action you do, that is what service, humility, and Ishwar Pranidhana means. Whatever action you do, whatever food you eat, whatever work you do, let it be a worship to your Lord who is seated within, the Ishta. That you give to another, whatever you give to another, don't think you are giving it to a person. You are trying to serve the Ishvara which is in him, service of the God in man. To that, with that spirit, if you work, all the offerings or all the work that you do automatically become offerings to the Lord. So this kind of devotion requires a special kind of temperament. It is not for everybody, mind you. It has to, one has to be humble, one has to have these qualities to have that attitude of humility and service. But even though it is not for everybody, everybody can try to practice it. To be able to feel this kind of humility and self-surrender is a great blessing, because it is the safest, according to Sri Ramakrishna also, it is the safest and the happiest way to liberation. Otherwise, you have to struggle. Otherwise, you will feel, oh, I am not making enough efforts. I may not reach the goal. So all these anxieties and worries will be there. So Ishvara is the the force of creation, maintenance and dissolution of Prakriti. So Ishvara is Prakriti's ruler. He rules Prakriti. The difference between us and Ishvara and the Jiva is bound by Prakriti. So we have to get rid of the bondage, and we can't get it without the help of Ishvara. So he is a special kind of being which Vedanta has introduced, or even Patanjali introduced, who is not a servant of Prakriti. So if a servant or if a child holds on to the father or to the mother, then he can negotiate his way through life very easily. That is the idea. So man is subject to ignorance. As Jivas, we are bound, but as Shiva, or as when we associate ourselves with Ishvara, then we are free. At least he helps us to make us free. So this merely attachment and clinging to the little Jivahood, or the ignorance, the ego, the sense objects, and all those things are distracting us and not allowing us to interact with Ishvara, who can pull us. That means we have to raise our sail. That is all. Raising of the sail uh, just means doing sadhana and surrendering everything and asking him to blow the breeze in such a way that the boat moves forward. So we will discuss about this. We are coming. If there is any question, you can ask. We will close now. Yeah. If there is any question, you can ask in the chat. Yeah. As a comparison to your talks on Raj Yoga, do you suggest any book like Swami Prabhavananda or Swami Sarvagatananda's commentary? Swami Vivekananda's Raj Yoga is very good, but Swami Sarvagatananda is a very, very comprehensive book in 2 volumes, which he published. It was a series of lectures which he gave in Boston, in MIT. So the most of the students and the staff there used to attend those classes. So it was recorded, audio was recorded, then it was edited and abridged, and then published in 2 volumes. So that is a very good book if you want. But otherwise, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as described by Swami Vivekananda is really good. There should not be any problem. Once we thoroughly master that book, That's why I'm taking that book as a text. So, of course, Prabhavanji's books are there. There are other books. Bhaskaranji has also written. There's so many other books which help us to understand certain other aspect from a different viewpoint. But the main book is Swami Vivekananda's Raj Yoga. So next is, the message is this: everything we do, body and mind yoga, need to be done with Shraddha, and then the target can be achieved. Yes, yes. That is what exactly the topic of today. That whatever you do, if you do it as a contribution or as a dedicated service of the Lord, then the sadhana becomes easy and you start to get the benefits of that sadhana. So any more question? Otherwise, I'll close for the day. Yeah. So tomorrow I will announce. I don't know whether the university is because we missed the last Gita class because of the vaccines. They had postponed it. I don't know whether there is a Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. If they hold the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, then we will have Holy Mother's Gospel of Holy Mother tomorrow. Otherwise, we will have Gita as usual. But I will have to message because I have not yet received the message that I have to take the Gita class tomorrow. Normally, it would have been Gospel of Holy Mother, but since we could not take the Gita class last time because of the vaccine, so maybe if Maharaj suggests, if they send me the message, then I will inform you in advance. Otherwise, it is Gospel of Holy Mother at 5:45 as usual. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you, Swami.
Namaste. Thank you.